Hello everyone, this is Ricky, and as you can tell by the title of this video, I want to talk a little bit about the Kenan-Flagler business application and why I personally think I wasn't able to be accepted for the major. So a little bit of background, I'm a sophomore here at UNC Chapel Hill, and after your first year here, you're allowed to apply for the business administration major at the Kenan-Flagler school as an undergraduate student. So that's what I will be referring to in this video. So the application process for the business major is pretty similar to just applying for any college. They take a look at stuff like your GPA, your extracurriculars, resume, and they also have a couple of short responses and essays that they look at as well. And the main things that I'm going to be sharing in this video were my GPA, my resume, and my essay responses. And I also want to say that I did only apply for the business administration major here, so not the minor, and it is slightly different. So you might be wondering why you would want to watch this video if I did get rejected. But in this video, I will be going over the main parts of my application and what I think I did do well on, and also what I think I could improve on. So if you guys are trying to apply, you could probably learn from it as well. So I am recording this part of the video after the decisions came out, but I did record my live reaction to me opening the decision, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm going to add that now in the video before we get into discussing my parts of the application. Alright, so today is October 20th and the business school decisions just came out. So I'm about to open it up here. I'm probably gonna film my reaction to it as well. Probably won't be much of a reaction, but it'll still be nice to have it anyways. So I haven't opened it yet, but if you see my first video, I'm not too confident in getting in. I would probably give myself let's say a 10% chance of getting in. And I believe that the business school has about a 30 to 40% acceptance rate. I sort of heard that might be higher this year, but I'm not too sure, so we'll see. But I'm screen recording this right now, and I'm about to open it and see how it goes. So let's see here. So I'm gonna click on view update and see if we got in. Oh, it says we regret to inform you that you're not selected for admission. Alright, yeah, so I didn't get into it, but that's alright though. I'll still be making this video. You guys probably already knew the decision by the title, but yeah. Oh, and I did stop the recording. I just skimmed over it, but I forgot to mention here that it did say that there are over 1,000 applicants, and they only have room for 390 majors and 90 minors, which means the acceptance rate was probably around 40 to 50%. So in case you guys were wondering what the acceptance rate is. So first thing I wanted to talk about was GPA and grades and classes here. So here I'm going to show my internal transcript and grades and GPA from our first year here, and hopefully I'm allowed to show all this stuff. But for the undergraduate business major, there are 5 prerequisites that you should take, and they probably place a heavier emphasis on your grades in those classes than some of the other ones. So I'll list the 5 prerequisites here, and I did get a credit for some of them, but for other ones I did take here, as we can see. I took Intro to Economics here, Intro to Financial Accounting here, and also in my second semester last year, I took Intermediate Microeconomics as well. And you can see my grades for those. And the school probably does look a little at your high school GPA as well, because for the most part you are a second year, and you probably haven't taken many classes at UNC, so they probably look a little bit at that as well. But I think for the most part, they probably look at your GPA from your first year, and also your grades for those prerequisite classes. So I think that my GPA and grades were a relatively stronger aspect of my application, because as you can see, my cumulative GPA at the end of the year last year, which is what they end up looking at, was a 3.8 here. Now moving on to the resume and extracurriculars is where I sort of wished I took a screenshot of the application interface so I can show a little bit more about how it actually looks like. But for the most part, if I remember correctly, they have you enter in the honors and awards that you've gotten and the extracurriculars that you've done and when you've done them and stuff like that. And then you also write that down as well later on in your resume. So I guess talking a little bit about the resume for the business application, they do provide you with a template that they expect you to follow. So that's essentially what I did here. I just added in my information here to wherever I saw fit. So I guess going through, at the top we have the education along with my GPA, and I also have my honors and awards down here, which include a scholarship award that I got, which is what the Winstead Carolina Scholar Award is. And being a Carolina Scholar just means that you've received a scholarship, and I'm also in Honors Carolina here. And a little bit more about myself in terms of the community involvement. The first thing that I have here is about an Instagram theme page I started around Apple, like the company. So I create content for that where I post snippets about what I think are interesting facts and news about Apple. And when I started the page, I also wanted to revolve it around the technology aspect of Apple, but also the business and more finance side of it as well, like talking about their business model and stuff. Another thing that I did, which I did have a leadership position in, is that I volunteered at a local computer refurbishing nonprofit organization here for about 4 years, and I mainly stopped doing that because of the pandemic and stuff. And also going on to additional information, I did include like your basic stuff, like another language I'm fluent in, some of my interests, some creative applications that I've been working on learning, like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, which is what I use to edit this video, and also a little bit of Lightroom as well. But for the most part, as you can tell, I went through that pretty fast, and that's because I don't really have much on my resume, and that's probably why I think my resume and extracurricular aspect of my application was lacking a little bit, because I don't really have much at all. And one notable thing that I'm missing here would be the work experience. I haven't really done any internships or anything or worked an actual job before, and that probably didn't look too good on my application either, because the business school probably places a lot of emphasis on your resume and what you've done and your experiences and stuff. So yeah, overall, I think this is probably one of my weaker parts of my application. One thing that I did forget to mention is that in terms of this Instagram page that I run here, some of you might be wondering why I decided to include this, and I wanted to put this in here because I do discuss business related stuff on there, so I thought that would be appropriate for this application. And it's also something that I thought would be pretty unique on my application and hopefully would have made me stand out and make up for my lack of work experience here on my resume. So the most time-consuming part of the application was the open responses. And again, unfortunately, I wasn't able to screenshot what it actually looked like within the application itself. But luckily, I did copy and paste the questions, which I have in bold here, and also have my answers here, which I've written down below. So this year we had 3 short answer questions and also 3 longer essay type questions. And each of these short answer questions here had 100-word maximums, and this first one was about sustainability. So my answer for this one, I really try to connect it with my Instagram page that I have by talking about Apple and the sustainable things that they've been doing in their business model. So for most of these, I'm probably just going to post them up on the side here instead of reading them, because I think that will probably take a bit too long. So maybe you can pause the video if you're interested in reading them, and just so you can understand a little bit what I'm referring to when I'm going through these. So the second one was a very interesting one. What does it mean to have an entrepreneurial mindset? So I think this is a pretty fitting question for the business major, and in my answer for this one, I really try to focus on the mindset portion of the question and talk about the traits that people have if they have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I try to keep a lot of the sentences here short and concise, and especially with this opening sentence, I think it does a really good job of directly answering the question in a very short and concise way, and I expand a little bit on that later on in the response. But yeah, I thought this was a very interesting question as well, because everything that I wrote down here I truly do believe, and I really just try to be as honest and genuine as possible in my short responses here and also in my essays as well, because I knew that my resume was going to be lacking when compared to other business applicants. So in order for make up to that, I try to stand out in my writing. And while we're still on the topic of this entrepreneurial mindset question, I do want to say that the mindset that I describe here in my response is a mindset that I personally try to follow. So that's why for this question, I wanted to keep the focus on the mindset part of it, as opposed to what it means to start a business and stuff like that. Because as I wrote in the last sentence here, having an entrepreneurial mindset is not just about wanting to start a business, but in my opinion, it's also about someone who has a unique perspective on the world around them. So this last short answer here was about inclusivity, and what I wanted to convey here was that I acknowledge that everyone is different, and I think that it's important to keep an open mind when meeting new people. And I think that's not only important in the business world, but also everywhere that you go as well. And if you've watched my first video, my response to this question here is essentially the main reason why I decided to start my YouTube channel and why I wanted to start sharing my thoughts on here. So the essays that they ask are a bit long. They have 500-word maximums. And again, I'm probably not going to read these out loud, but if you do want to read them, I'll have them on the side here, and you can pause it and read it, but I'll probably keep them up here as I'm talking about it. So the first one was essentially a personal statement, and it tells you what it wants your personal statement here to address, but it's really about discussing why you want to do business and why Kenan-Flagler. So in this first paragraph here, I essentially give a little bit of background about my reasoning for why I want to do business, which started from me wanting to read a finance book, and I became interested in that from there. I found that I ended up wanting to do more research on my own, like searching stuff up on the internet and also watching YouTube videos to learn more about business and finance as well. So in this paragraph here, I discussed a little bit about a specific YouTuber that I took inspiration from, and I also try to talk a little bit more about my Instagram page as well to try to play off of that. And I threw in this last paragraph here to talk a little bit more about why specifically Kenan-Flagler, which I added in because I thought it would show that at least I've done a little bit of research into the program. So this second essay here is about teamwork, and to be honest, I struggled a little bit thinking about an idea for this one because I don't really have any good experiences that match what they're asking for in this question. So again, I think that goes back to my lack of work experience and having to work with other people in an environment like that. So what I did do here, which I thought was probably slightly risky, was talk a little bit about my gaming hobby, which is something that I used to do a lot. And if you're familiar with the gaming environment, if you play multiplayer games and stuff, you're going to be placed on teams of random people that you probably don't know while you're playing for the duration of the game. So that's really what I try to refer to here when I was talking about my team experience. So the reason why this was slightly risky too is because I know that my audience would be business school application readers. So that's why I was a little bit unsure about this essay, but it was either this or writing nothing at all. So I just decided to write this and hope that it would be unique enough for them to find interest in it. So throughout this essay, I just try to recall a specific game that I played where we had teammates that didn't really want to try to win the game, but at the end we did end up winning anyways, which is probably a bit cliche. But I felt that writing about gaming naturally makes this essay slightly less cliche anyway, so I thought it was fine to have that in there. So although this team environment is probably not one that the admission team wanted to get at, I still thought that was a pretty interesting concept because again, I try to be as genuine as possible in these. So I felt that writing about this gaming experience would have been more genuine than writing about some general team experience that wouldn't have been interesting at all to read. So I think that this last essay is asking about the steps that you've taken to become more aware of cultures that are outside your own. And in this response, I talked about two main things that I've done that I think answer this question well. So for the first one, I start by reiterating that I really do think that everyone is unique and that everyone has a different story to tell. So one thing that I did near the beginning of the semester was that I would sit down with people that I saw sitting by themselves in the cafeteria, and I would ask if I could sit with them for a little bit and have a chat with them. And what I found from this is that I've never had two conversations that were the exact same. I've always found that everyone is different, and I thought that was very interesting to hear other people's backgrounds. And at the end here, I've mentioned the names of a couple people that I've talked to through this that I found were interesting. And again, I felt that this just added a bit more to the genuineness of the essay. And another thing that I talked about was taking a Chinese language class here. And here at UNC, the Chinese that they teach would be Mandarin Chinese, which is a bit different from the Chinese that I'm fluent in speaking, which would be Cantonese. So although they use the same characters, I never learned how to read and write Chinese, so that didn't really help me at all. So I was essentially learning a new language when taking that class, minus maybe some similar grammar rules. So I brought this up because I wanted to talk about how although I am Chinese, I was born in the United States and I've never actually been to China. I felt that taking Chinese 101 not only helped me learn Mandarin, but also helped me learn a little bit about the culture as well, because the professor was from China, and that one thing that she did was that she would share a little bit about her life there. And one time she shared pictures that she took of the city and the food that she ate there. And overall, I just felt that this was really cool because although I was able to relate to some stuff like the food and stuff, there was some stuff about Chinese culture that my professor talked about that I didn't know before, so I thought it was interesting to hear her talk about that. So what I talked about in this last paragraph here is why I personally like learning about other cultures, and also how I think it ties into the business world and why I think it's important there as well. And I also think that this very last sentence here was very strong as well because it connects my thoughts on cultural awareness and my philosophy on business as a whole. But yeah, I think this last essay overall is pretty solid as well because it goes back to why I like hearing other people's stories and learning about their backgrounds and why I think it's so interesting to do so. So anyways, I really thought that my short answers was the strongest part of my application because I thought that they all answered the questions very well and they gave a lot of insight into how I really think and my philosophies on this stuff. And I personally thought that all my essays were pretty solid as well. But one thing that I did wish that I mentioned more was the Instagram page I run and connected that more with some of the answers that I gave. And I thought that would have been fitting as well because I do talk a lot about business on there. And I feel that the business school probably would have been interested in hearing a little bit more about that. So yeah, overall, these were the main parts of my business application and my reflections on it. I really do think that my short responses and GPA were probably the strongest aspects of my application, and my resume and extracurriculars were probably lacking a bit, especially when compared to other business students. So that's why I personally thought it held me back in terms of the application process, and it's probably why I didn't get accepted. But there's probably other reasons too, because again, they look at a lot of other stuff as well, but I think that probably would have been the most obvious downside of my application. So there were a couple more things I did want to mention about the application, and one of them was a video interview that they have you do. And what happens is that when you click start, they'll have 2 questions posted up on the screen for you, and they'll give you a little bit of time to think about them, and then you'll say your answers into your webcam, sort of like an interview, but it's recorded instead of being live, and that's another thing that they look at as well when deciding on your decision. And one more thing that I believe that they look at, they might look at your SAT scores as well, because although I don't think that they asked for it, if I remember correctly, but they on their website they do have a thing where it mentions the median SAT scores of the business majors and the minors, so they might look at that as well from when you apply to the school maybe or something like that. So these were my thoughts on my undergraduate business major application for Kenan-Flagler. and I probably missed a good amount of things that I can't remember right now, but this video has already taken me longer than it should have to record, so I'll probably just leave it at that. But if you guys have any questions, you guys can leave them in the comments below, and also if you have any suggestions as well for future video ideas, to leave those down in the comments below as well. So as always, thank you for watching this video. Hope you found it interesting, and I hope to see you in my next one. And we can't forget about that shit.